85 years ago in New York City, someone was born who has had a profound influence on the movements for peace and justice in this country. In a nation where we tend to forget our history days after it's made, this person has reminded us time and time again of the real history of our nation and the real history that regular people like all of us have played in building this society. A bomber pilot in World War II, a teacher in the South, an activist in the civil rights movement, and a resident of Boston, today, I give to you historian, activist, scholar, and professor, Howard Zinn.
You forgot to add Restaurants fan. Thank you. That was great listening to Dahlia. She said, "Oh, I'm warming them up for you." Well, that was more than a warm-up. I will try to cool you down a little. But whenever I come to a gathering like this, I always ask, why am I here? What are we doing here? And I guess I think we're here because we want to say to our fellow countrymen and to people all over the world that this government does not speak for us. The government does not act for us. This government does not represent us. Neither the Republicans nor the Democrats represent us. Congress does not represent us. The Supreme Court does not represent us. We are on our own, as we always have been, as people always have been throughout history. Governments have never represented the people anywhere. Governments have always represented privilege and power, and we are seeing the epitome of that now in Washington. And it has always been up to the people themselves when they wanted to secure peace and justice to work and act and struggle for it, and that's what we are doing today. So, we're here to represent democracy. The democracy, well, look, if you want to know what democracy is, read the Declaration of Independence. I was going to say, Bush should read the Declaration of Independence, but no, there's no point. There's no point. He wouldn't know which way it's facing, wouldn't know where to hold the paper. He never heard of it. The Declaration of Independence says that governments are instituted to guarantee an equal right of everybody to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when governments become destructive of those ends, then it is the right of the people to alter or abolish the government. You see? That's our founding document of democratic philosophy. And we need to pay attention to that because this government has violated every human right we can think of. It's violated the most fundamental right of people all over the world, certainly people in Iraq, and certainly people in this country who've been sent over there, the right to life. It has violated the right to life of people there and here, and violated the most fundamental human rights. Violated the right of people to be secure in their homes, to be secure from knocks at midnight on their door, not just in Iraq, but here in the United States. We're facing a Gestapo-like situation here in the United States where people have to worry because all of us can be designated as illegal enemy combatants. Did you know that? Any one of us. I expect somebody to show up any minute. Really. You are all illegal enemy, and once you are designated that way, you can be picked up and put away, and nobody will hear from you again. That's the kind of situation we face. When a government does these things, when a government violates these rights, when a government takes the wealth of the country and gives it to the super rich and leaves nothing for education and health and for children, when a government does that, that government needs to be disobeyed. That government needs to be resisted. No, the power of governments depends on the obedience of people. When people start disobeying, the power of the government begins to fall. And that's why we discovered that during the war in Vietnam. When people began to disobey, when soldiers began to disobey, when pilots refused to fly, when young people refused to sign up for the draft, then the government had to listen, and finally the war came to an end. That's why I salute the veterans who come back from Iraq and who refuse to go, and the Iraq veterans against the war. Because that's what we need. When enough soldiers refuse to fight, this war will not be able to go on. So we must support them in every way we can. This is we have to reject the language, this war language of the government, nation building. The first nation we need to build is ourselves. We need to build the United States into a true nation, into a nation that cares for its people and cares for people in other places in the world. So yes, we need to get out. We need to get our soldiers out of Iraq. You know, and as Dahlia said, no timetables, none of this nonsense that these Democratic leaders have been talking about, 6 months, a year. You know, that's ridiculous. Every day that the soldiers are in Iraq, more people die. The civil war that's going on in Iraq is a direct result of our occupation. And we ought to learn something from history. You don't bring democracy to a country by invading it and occupying it. You know, the United States did not bring democracy to Mexico when it invaded Mexico in the mid-19th century. Didn't bring democracy to Cuba when it invaded it at the turn of the century. Didn't bring democracy to the Philippines, or to all those countries in Central America where U.S. Marines went into Central America. We didn't bring democracy to those places. We didn't bring democracy to Vietnam. We didn't bring democracy to Iraq. No. And we ought to, yes, not listen to that language, the language worried about terrorism. You can't have a war on terrorism. War is terrorism. So the Democrats, these pusillanimous, I always wanted to use that word, these pusillanimous Democrats, because if I said cowardly, you know, that would be an insult, but I'll say pusillanimous. Pusillanimous Democrats don't want to speak out boldly against the war. They don't want to be called weak on defense. Weak on defense? We are not defending ourselves in Iraq. We've never defended ourselves in our war. We haven't defended ourselves in a war since the War of 1812. Really. Not a war for defense, it's a war of aggression, as our wars have been, you see. And, you know, and the Democrats don't want to be called weak on security. You don't get security with weapons. You don't get security with bombs. You don't get security, I mean, we were the most heavily armed country in the world on 9/11, and we were attacked by people who blew up the Twin Towers. The weapons will not bring us security. The kind of security we need is health security and children's security and people's security. That's the kind of security we need. So, just consider this. Most people in this country agree with us. Most people in this country are against the war, against Bush. Most people in the world agree with us. It's important to keep this in mind. We are not alone. That's why we're here together today. We are not alone. Beside the thousands of people here, there are millions of people in this country and all over the world who want the same things we do, because people are basically decent, and when they begin to make their way through the lies told to them by the government, then we will see enormous and tumultuous change, and we will have a better society and a better world. Thank you.